Hi, I'm Jonathan Colopy from the Why Be Well podcast. The episode we have coming forward is with Dr. Stephen Jones, who is the author of Cracking the New Leadership Code. He's going to share with us about the principles of this particular book. He is the founder of Dr. Jones Consulting Firm, and nationally known and one of America's top experts in leadership, diversity, and inclusion. Dr. Jones recognizes changes that have been going on in the workplace, and thus the need for leadership style changes as well. Please join us for this conversation. Hello, I'm Jonathan Colopy from your YMCA. Welcome to Be Well. I'm very fortunate to have these conversations to foster a mindful lifestyle of well-being. Our topic today is cracking the new leadership code. Sounds fascinating. We're going to get into this. Our guest, I'm very fortunate also to have Dr. Stephen Jones, CEO, founder of Jones. Jones is a consulting firm. Dr. Jones has become a nationally known, one of America's top experts in leadership, diversity, and inclusion. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Jonathan, it is a pleasure to be here. It is an honor to join the Y family and exploring Be Well and to explore this important topic of just figuring out what are we expecting of leaders in this day and age.
Well, you're moving us along, which I appreciate. I'm aware, most of us are aware that the marketplace, the workplace has changed significantly over the last handful of years. And I know you're aware that even prior to pandemic, there was change coming about. So if you will, Dr. Jones, give some context in terms of what is the workplace today?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? Because that is the question. What is the workplace today? We remember right before, if we think about before the pandemic, people would say, well, you can't work from home and be productive, right? People would say, you have to be in person to be productive, right? People would say, we spend more time at work than we do at home with our family. Well, all that has changed during the pandemic, right? COVID fatigue was real, right? I'm thinking about one organization we were working with virtually where the leader said, I just had to leave my house and go sit in my car and eat my dinner because I had been at home with all of my kids and Wi-Fi and homeschooling and then there was the global pandemic called systemic racism after the murder of George Floyd. Yeah. And that was another area that said, how do we keep each other safe in the workplace, safe from racism? Being quiet about things that happen in society at work doesn't equal that safety. So the workplace expectations around talking about things that happen in society also change, right? And so as we, let's say, return back to the office or navigate that or negotiate that is more like it, right? Yeah. Then we also saw quiet quitting and people saying, I'm not coming back to work because you said so, boss, right? I have a voice, I have a say so, and I don't want to come back to toxic work cultures. So the workplace has changed in so many ways and spaces. And I think what we expect of leaders, given that, has shifted in some significant ways.
Well, you raised some excellent points because I think about coming up through my career and different mentors that provided leadership. And, early on, there was more of that command and control model. Yeah. And you looked for the leader to kind of be that person. And then interestingly enough, during the pandemic with people connecting via Zoom for meetings and whatnot and remote work, the leader's role was a challenging one in terms of how do you maintain your team, support productivity. And now they were coming through that again in terms of how do we meet the needs of our team members as well as our mission in whatever our business is.
Yes, absolutely. So an example of that shift, right, in the new leadership code is throughout this entire experience and journey, leaders had to practice vulnerability and empathy. And some people would say compassion, right? So this idea, to your point, of never let them see you sweat as a leader, right? Tell and command and control, as you spoke about, right? Shifted to communicating the why, inspiring people, understanding what motivates others, right? But also modeling authentic leadership was another, and that challenge us as leaders to lead with our areas of growth and weakness, as opposed to only lead with our strengths, which means that as a leader, we had to be comfortable to be able to say, here's where I have failed. Here's where I have fallen short. And here's what I've learned from that. That's a significant shift from that command and control, don't ask questions, do as I say, and in many cases, not as I do.
Well, that is a radical paradigm change, because for the leader to be vulnerable, for the leader to be authentic and show up in a particular way, in some ways feeling like they may have lost some control.
Yes.
And I, Dr. Jones, I look to who would have been mentors who are the mentors to show us that way today?
Yeah, I think that there are, I'm thinking about a leader that I've worked with years ago at Toyota, who was just so phenomenal with listening to his team and was so amazing at communicating, here's what I'm hearing. And then he would say, here's what I'm struggling with. Help me figure this part out. And I would watch people want to work in his department, right? Want to work in his division because he wasn't being performative. He wasn't pretending that he had the answers. He was pretending that, not even pretending, he was demonstrating that he had the questions to help figure out the answers. And I think that's part of that major shift.
That's an excellent example. I was reading a book and it was about a method of leadership regarding inspiring your team. And it really, there was a CEO who actually asked all the employees in the business to evaluate him in his role, because he truly recognized that my role is to support you in being successful as team members, and to be vulnerable enough to put himself up to being evaluated. Often it's that top-down model of, the leader evaluates all those that report to him. Right. I just thought that was fantastic. And it takes a certain maybe strength of character or vulnerability of character to do that.
Absolutely. And so part of that code around leading self includes the idea that our effectiveness as leaders lives in the impact of our actions, not our intentions.
Say that one more time.
Sure.
That was excellent.
Right. Our effectiveness as leaders lives in the impact of our actions, not in our intentions alone. And so hence the 360s, right, that are happening in many organizations and leaders getting that feedback, because leadership is like being approachable. If you're the only person who thinks you're approachable, you're in trouble.
Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
That's a great perspective in terms of how to bring a leader along. So in your work, Dr. Jones, how do you support this new generation of leaders in this leadership code?
Yes. So we're developing a framework that is providing a structure for kind of identifying and cracking that new leadership code. That framework starts with leading self. And in that area of leading self, it includes managing both my conscious and unconscious biases. Right? Whether it's similar to me bias. Jonathan, I will tell you, we work in some organizations where, you watch the leader's haircut and the shoes that the leaders wear, and you see people who report to that leader starting to dress like the leader.
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah.
in-group bias, similar to me bias. And oftentimes, as we know, this bias is happening outside of the leader's consciousness. And
Mm,
so the idea of leading self is really key. That second part of the framework is leading teams. And this is where we talk about really looking for uh, patterns within the team, right? Ensuring there's diversity within the team. And the team could be a department, the team could be an organization as a whole, but it involves looking at team dynamics, right? So many places, um, toxic culture that is fear-based and control focused has been the ways that many leaders intentionally or not have led, right? Have led. And so that idea of really looking at the culture of the team, shifting from fear-based to psychological safety, right? Shifting from toxic culture to inspirational culture.
mm,
Because I think that's a big part of what so many people said, I'm not coming back to,
mm.
right? I've been at home, I've been able to breathe in my own space, as difficult as it's been. Now you're asking me to come back into this workplace that is filled with uh, disrespectful behavior, diminishing people who are not in the in group. And so that second part of the framework is very much so about leading team. And then the third part is leading community. So
So,
self, team, community.
and I'll let you. I'd love
Mhm.
for you to share about community, but you've got a lot of wheels
Mm,
for me turning with what you're bringing through. I'm just wondering, how do we become aware as a leader,
yeah,
as you spoke of those unconscious biases? That, you were sharing with me, that team members emulate how someone is dressing and their hairstyle and whatnot. So the leader could feel that that's complimentary.
yes.
They may get puffed up and then be empowered by that. But how does that leader then become aware of how that could negatively impact his team and the development of his own leadership code? I'm just wondering, how does
Yeah.
someone get to that baseline?
Yes. The one of the ways that we track our unconscious biases, because we can't track them against our intentions, because they're happening outside of our intentions. One of the ways that we track our patterns of unconscious bias is to look at the unintentional patterns in our decision making and the outcomes of our policies,
Mm.
right? So if we say that we want to have, for example, a diverse leadership team, and then we look at the list of people who are on the top talent list for our organization, and we don't see that diversity reflected. Then we say that means there's probably some unintended bias in
Mm.
the recruitment process, in the identification of talent process, in the promotional process, right? So then we have to look for where those biases have hijacked our best intentions and our goals and outcomes. So looking for the patterns. We worked with one organization where they pretty much would promote people who went to certain schools.
Uh,
And to your point, they had confirmation bias because they saw themselves successful. They would hire people from those same schools, support them to be successful,
yeah,
right? And then they
yeah,
would confirm that, hey, that's our success,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Somebody told me once, Jonathan, we didn't know how good baseball could be until everyone was allowed to play.
Well,
We
that's a
didn't,
great example.
right? We didn't know how good women's tennis could be until everyone was allowed to play. Women's gymnastics, right? Golf. We could name the examples of where when we open up the net, bring more diverse talent in, that raises the bar of performance, innovation, and competition.
Those are wonderful examples, and obviously where you're going with that, that leads into the workplace and how we as
Yes.
leaders and how we build our team. So that caused a pause for me, like, aha,
That's
yes.
right. That's right. Absolutely. And this is part of where um, having the diversity is one step. Building, I'm going to connect back to that psychological safety,
Mm,
building the safety so that people can bring their diverse views and diverse ideas to the table. That takes another skill set, right? The third part is that community. So after you may remember the nightclub shooting in Florida,
mm,
right? The Asian hate, actions and basically acts of Asian hate
yes,
and anti-Asian bias, right?
yes,
Um, the murder of George Floyd, and we can go on, unfortunately, right?
yes,
The question then becomes, part of that psychological safety in the workplace includes what we heard one African American woman say after the murder of Michael Brown. And she said, when I dropped my child off, I wondered whether they'd make it back home.
ah, powerful.
And right. And she said, and I walked into work and everyone was functioning as if it was business as usual.
Ah,
And I wondered if my coworkers really understood and really cared for me,
mm,
because safety doesn't start and stop when I show up at work,
mm,
right? It's a 24/7 experience,
yeah.
right? Please.
That's just so powerful, Dr. Jones. I mean, I just find myself kind of pausing and
Yeah.
a depth of feeling with
Mm,
what you're bringing through, because often, not often, hopefully, the workplace can be transactional. You do
yeah.
your role, you have colleagues, uh, but what you're bringing through is just how grand it can be when
Yes.
everyone is connected in community. And what you speak to, though, it could be a challenging thing for today's leader. There's so many significant social issues at play right now that are coming to the forefront, and I
Yes.
just wonder how leaders, how their capability of taking it on with sensitivity, uh, so that the impact that they have is a successful impact that allows everyone to feel connected
Yes.
as part of that
Mm,
community.
absolutely. I think, uh, Jonathan, this starts to get to the core of our humanity.
Mm,
That part of showing that we care
mm,
is to show that when a part of our human family is hurt and
mm,
injured, that we feel about that,
mm,
that we acknowledge that. I was in a meeting about 3 weeks ago, um, and working with this client from a foundation. And the leader of the organization started off the meeting saying, as we start the meeting, I just want to acknowledge the loss of Tyree Nichols' life.
mm,
I want to acknowledge the Lunar New Year, shooting the Monterey Park. And she said, and I want to start there because I'm really saddened,
mm.
and those experiences impact me.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. It's authentic, it's raw. Um, yeah,
It was unsolicited, it was
yep,
not performative, and it was
yep,
clear that she was demonstrating compassion.
yeah,
Right? She didn't go into statistics. She
yeah,
didn't go into the history of Lunar New Year. She didn't go into what many people oftentimes think is necessary to
yeah,
show for the plethora of unfortunate, right, pain points in our country right now and world.
yeah,
She basically said, I'm negatively impacted
yeah,
by other human beings from other groups,
yeah,
right? Because she was a white woman who was speaking about this.
Mm.
And I saw the level of trust go up. I saw the level of fear go down, and I saw the readiness. Now, this is important in my mind, Jonathan, because when a family drops their child off to the Y,
Yes.
they want to know that the Y family is tracking the impact of Tyree Nichols to that young Black boy who
Yeah.
shows up, the
Yeah.
impact of the young Asian child who's coming to play with their friends,
Yeah.
that the Y also has leaders and staff who understand that that child, and if not the child, that child's parents or guardians,
Yeah.
bringing additional lenses to
Mm.
what it means to be safe.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be safe and connected.
Yes,
What I love about what you just shared, Dr. Jones, is that, sometimes as leaders, we could trip over what's politically correct, how
yeah,
to say it. What you cut through in your example is really leading with your heart, coming
yes.
from, as you said, that place of compassion. You may
Mhm.
not have the right words,
That's right.
feeling that you're conveying that you're connected and you care about this. You
That's
care
right.
about all.
That's right.
That was a powerful, beautiful share. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just one more story pops in my
Please.
head around um, another woman in a listening session. I'll tell you, after the murder of George Floyd, the following 3 months, the team at Jones listened to over 75,000 people
Wow.
from around the world. And one story that comes to mind was a woman who said, I've worked with my team for over 15 years. She said, we've celebrated births, we've
Mm.
celebrated deaths, we've celebrated marriages, we've celebrated so many different things. She said, after the murder of George Floyd, she was waiting for one of her team members to just say, are you okay?
Mm.
How are you?
Yeah.
And she said she saw the nervousness of her team members not wanting to say the wrong thing.
Yeah.
She saw the what she perceived as some people kind of avoiding her.
Mm.
And she goes, given the range of emotions that we had been through and the ways that we had checked on each other's in the past,
Yeah.
right, for things that have occurred, she says it didn't feel like it was a major stretch for
Mm.
one of the team members to just check on me and say, how are you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, to your point, the staying to that core
Yeah.
of connecting across our humanity. Why is that important? It's important because when we don't connect across that humanity, then some people assume, do you not see me as human?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think I can see the challenge at times for people to cross into what might feel charged,
Yes.
that brings emotion. It's easier to some ways offer emotion and connection and support and caring on the life circumstances that are more commonplace. But
Mhm.
when something is poignant like this, we've all seen examples of where you're surprised that people don't come forward, or
Yes,
you're surprised by those that do,
that's right.
those that are more easily maybe
Yeah.
lending themselves to be connected to
Mhm,
humanity.
mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
so Dr. Jones, how the work that you're doing in terms of this leadership model,
Mhm.
how you highlighted self, teams, community. So where do we go as leaders to be able to be upskilled and learn this way of being, to see the impactful results of that we would intend and hope to see?
Yes. So I think there's an individual responsibility, right? Which is to say, how do I skill myself up, right? How do I read, look at videos, right? Do my own research. A young woman in a listening session said, she goes, we all have the same Google, right? So we may not all have the same Wi-Fi connection. We learned that over COVID, right? But we
Yeah.
all had the same Google. And so she says, you know, like we can do our own work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so we say, a colleague of mine, Dr. Shanna Teal, talks about leadership growth is personal growth.
Mm,
So we have to continue to grow ourselves, our skills.
yeah.
I think the second part is the idea of building and developing our teams,
Mm,
right? To identify meeting agreements. So anytime we start a meeting, we have, here's the 5 or 6 agreements that we will make. Listen to understand, be present, be more curious than certain, for example. So that as we work together as a team, we invite diversity of thought, diversity of viewpoint. A practical tool for that, we call it the 2 and 2 technique. And it's the idea of, before you make a final decision, that anyone on the team, including the leader, could pause and ask these 2 questions. First question, what are 2 reasons why people would agree with this decision, this direction, this practice, policy, approach? Second question, what are 2 reasons why people might resist or disagree with this direction, this decision, this policy, practice, or approach? The structure creates safety for diversity of thought, right? So creating those spaces where we as a team do this work. And then community is really about corporate social responsibility. It's about engaging in the community. It's about getting outside of our own communities to, when I taught at National University, I used to ask all of my students to do a cultural plunge where they had to spend at least 3 hours in a culture that is different from their own. And they could choose which culture. And their task was to see and be aware of how they were engaged with and what were some of the assumptions they brought into the engagement themselves. So engaging in community, building safety within our teams, and continuing to, Toyota has this term Kaizen, continuous improvement. Stay in the mode of continuous improvement, that growth mindset that Carol Dweck talks about.
Dr. Jones, I was taking notes as fast as I could. You were just sprinkling and distributing all these gems. I mean, that was very powerful. I know that I can use Google, and my Wi-Fi here is a little iffy at times as well, but I know I can rely on Google to really recapture some of these. I greatly appreciate your expertise and most importantly, really value what you're doing in the community and how you are transforming leaders and organizations. You know, to hear that you had 75,000 listening sessions, how valuable to be able to have community be able to be heard. So greatly appreciate the work that you're doing. I know there may be a book coming in the near future.
Absolutely, absolutely. We are working on a book called Cracking the New Leadership Code, and we'll be launching a talk show as well, which we're really excited about. And I want to say that for me, I could not do this without the phenomenal team at Jones. We just have a great team of leaders at all levels that, you know, are in Canada and throughout the US. So I'm honored to serve.
That's fantastic. And I have no doubt that you have a phenomenal team. And I appreciate your acknowledgement of the whole collective and bringing this work through. So Dr. Jones, thank you so much for being with us today. I will look forward to your book and your talk show and your platform expanding and bringing this information and resource to even more people. But pleasure to be with you today, Dr. Jones.
The pleasure was all mine. Thank you, Dr. Colopy. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. And to all of you, thank you for joining us. And till the next time we're together, please be well.